Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started. Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then, you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, as well as Q&A polls to take conversations with your fans to the next level. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. I'm personally getting a lot out of Spotify for Podcasters, and I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
What am I listening to here? Has he just completely lost his
Getting
mind?
crowded out here.
That's what I
feel like I'm
for you.
talking to
Everybody,
myself, but it's
go out and check out my new documentary.
Oh
my God, everybody.
It's a
Just checking in on you. Well,
I know you have
Isolation
got you.
I found my friends in my head.
Oh, God. I don't know if that was funny or terrifying. That is what goes on inside the mind of a madman. Yours truly here. No, that's just, obviously I'm doing that to exaggerate, to make a point. Yes, you do have, most of us have chatter going on in our brains, and we talk to ourselves. We criticize ourselves. Yes, all that stuff happens. But that was a little bit of that on steroids or acid, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, today we're going to talk about isolation. I know we've talked about isolation a little bit before, but I just wanted to talk in more detail because it's something that really can plague us artists. It can be either our biggest friend or like our worst enemy. And I've witnessed both sides of that. I was like, man, I can't wait to be a full-time artist and just creating all the time. And I loved being isolated. I loved my alone time creating in the past. You know what? For the most part, I have loved it. And, it's one of those things that I really have honed as a skill. And it's something that I'm on top of myself. So I'm focused. I'm very regimented. I have like a great work ethic and I create all the time. That's wonderful. And that's something that I couldn't do really, I don't think, at least in this field, without isolation. But I will say that isolation, especially after the pandy, which we all just came out of, not super recently, but recently enough, and we're still feeling the ripple effects of that from like a mental health standpoint. Isolation is something that we kind of all felt on steroids also. Man, we're talking about a lot of steroids. I'm going to pump you up. So yeah, we felt that a lot. And I think for me, obviously you can throw the chronic pain in there too, but just for anybody in general, I think going through the pandemic and being a creator, it just felt even more isolated. It was like those moments that we had to get out and connect with people were gone. And so we really got used to just being alone a lot of times and creating a lot of times. And that was great if you were focused. That was great if you were a motivated person. But it also didn't really give you a chance to take a breather. And I think a lot of bad habits have developed. I think we can develop a lot of bad habits. And I think part of the reason why I want to talk about this today, isolation, in its new form, in its post-pandy form, is that unchecked, like going unchecked, isolation can make you develop some really bad habits and some habits that can sabotage your art and your career a little bit and your mindset. Maybe that's something that's happened to you. Maybe you're saying, oh, wow, yeah, that's definitely me. I'm in a funk and I don't know how to get out of it. Well, that's something that I think is so important because at the end of the day, as creators, not only with our creations and our mindset, but like also with our career, it's something that we are in the driver's seat of. We are only as good as our mindset. And if you're letting complete isolation over the past, 2+ years, 3 years, if you've let that seep in too much and develop some bad habits, then you're really not getting the most out of your mind. So this is just a little bit of a cautionary message and maybe a refresher that we need to develop some good habits again. Start thinking some good thoughts and start developing some better patterns. Also, unfortunately, I think the more we progress as a society, the more isolated we're becoming. We're becoming like that Bad Religion song. I'm a 21st century digital boy. I don't know how to read, but I got a lot of toys. Anyway, it's not that 100%, but it's an isolation. It's like we have all these toys, we have all this technology at our fingertips, we have all these like quote unquote connections at our fingertips through our social media and through Zoom and through texting and blah blah blah, this and that and so forth. I don't want to talk about this too much because we all know this. You can't really turn on the news without hearing the negative effects of social media and blah 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 blah. But the thing is, I think that's going to be something that we are going to be more and more used to as time progresses, getting more and more isolated by technology too. So if you're an artist and you've got that mindset, yeah, this can be something that can work to your advantage. But it also means that we have to be strong and we have to kind of cultivate good mental habits. That's not getting lost with the critique or the critics in your head and letting that get you down and getting to a place where you're so down on yourself or depressed that you cannot get yourself to do any work. Like I've been there before. Like I love it. And I had a friend say, well, hey, be careful. You better be motivated because, being your own boss and working from your mind and working from your home, it takes a lot of motivation. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I did know, but even with knowing that, now I'm like 8 years in to being a full-time artist. And before that I was like a, part-time artist, part-time lover. So I did do, sorry for the sporadic musical interludes. I think that goes with the isolation theme, right? Yeah, I think, I did get used to it and I kind of, it's like tapering off of your medication. Well, I kind of tapered onto my isolation, my full-time isolation. And I think it would have been 100% fine had the pandemic not hit too, because I think that did give isolation like a bad connotation. So all the more important to schedule in times for your mental health, to whatever that is, talk to a therapist or to talk to a friend. Would you like to phone a friend? Sometimes like I just talked to a friend the other day, just called me up. We ended up shooting the shit about art for 45 minutes. And that stuff, just those little things can really snap you out of it and give you perspective. So, reach out to people, make sure you're not isolating yourself too much. And, I think for me, it's one of those things, like I hate to beat a dead horse here, but podcasts really go a long way. Getting on YouTube, listening to audiobooks, you do really feel like you're connecting with other human beings. You don't want to just be in a dark room, sitting there with obsessive thoughts going over and over in your mind, or getting into a creative funk where you're just creating the same thing over and over again because you don't have any fresh thoughts. So it's really up to you. That's the thing that I want to impress upon you more than anything with isolation. If you want to be a full-time artist, if you want to be doing this and coming up with fresh content, it's up to you to keep yourself curious. It's up to you to keep yourself interested in things. And it's up to you to give yourself mental food or fodder or whatever you want to think of, mental fuel, psychological fuel, creative fuel, if you will. I do that. I'm always feeding myself new music. I'm always listening to music. I'm always, downloading content from online. When I say downloading, I mean downloading mentally, like going on social media, getting inspiration, going on YouTube, watching videos, listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks. If I'm watching documentaries, if I'm talking to my wife, if I'm talking to fellow artists. And the podcast, I have the opportunity to interview really interesting people. And I take all those things and I kind of synthesize those down into new and creative ideas and inspiration for myself. So maybe you don't have a lot of those things, but we all have the ability to change that. And that's the thing that I really come back to a lot in this podcast is as an artist, as a full-time artist, as a person who is going to be in the driver's seat for not only your own creativity, but your own drive as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's trying to get ahead in the online or gallery game or whatever you're trying to do with your art, it all starts with you. It all starts with a step, but it all really starts with good mental health. You can use whatever's happening or what's ever happened to you and use that and be cathartic with it and use it as a way to transmute onto your art. That's great. But what I'm saying is learn to cultivate good habits, positive habits, inspirational habits that will keep you creating new things and getting your stuff out there in new ways and fresh ways and saying new things, because we don't want to be like one-trick ponies and we don't want to be one-hit wonders like, all of our 80s friends. We don't want to be one-hit wonders. We want to stand the test of time. We want to be evolving, and you cannot evolve without being curious. And isolation and extreme isolation can be a trap that you can fall into, and it's just easy to be like, well, I was joking with my wife the other day. She was telling me to check out something on the TV. It was like for that night. She was like, oh, check out something. Find something for us to watch tonight. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing it. I'm not turning on the TV because I know it's a slippery slope from turning on the TV to check something to becoming like a daytime TV watcher. And if you're your own person, if you're your own motivation and your own boss at home, your own stimulation, you don't want to give yourself these little things. You want to be able to have boundaries and say, look, I'd only watch TV at night with my wife at home for a certain amount of time. I don't turn it on during the day. I don't do this. I don't do social media for more than a half an hour. Like all these distractions, you got to kind of cut out because it is a very slippery slope. And your mind is really good at being lazy. So it's a slippery slope from just being like, yeah, I'll just check out this movie on YouTube, or I'll just check out that art documentary. And pretty soon you're just watching Netflix in the middle of the day with a bag of chips. You know what I mean?
Listening to Travis Tritt.
I got that from Bill Burr. That was so funny. He says that he doesn't curse anymore around his kids. So he's trying to find ways to curse. And Travis Tritt is like a country singer. And he's like, he just finds that very cathartic to say it's like cursing. So he's like,
for the love of Travis Tritt.
So thank you, Bill Burr. It's something that we can all use. But anyway, just some food for thought, everybody. Let's, not let our isolation get on top of us. Let's use it as a tool. Let's use it as something that's really good that allows us to be productive, but don't let it go too far to the other end where you're falling into an abyss of depression and regurgitating your own negative thoughts and stuff like that. We have to be aware of that. And if that's happening, if you can catch yourself, it's time to start some new habits. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already on top of that, and you're probably trying to find new habits and new ways to kind of spark new creativity and find little hacks and stuff like that. I'm always doing it. Let's keep motivating each other to do that as well. So that's it for today. A little episode on isolation. Hope you liked it, and we'll be back next week with a new interview, a new and improved interview. No, a new interview with another person kind of on the other side of the art world, which should be interesting. I don't think I've actually interviewed somebody in this realm and field. They do cross over into the art realm, but haven't really interviewed somebody who works in this capacity or functions in this capacity. So tune in for that next week. I don't think you will be disappointed. Have a great week. Have a creative week. Be good to each other. Be good to yourself. Be good to your mental health. And don't let that isolation creep in through the cracks and have those voices start taking over. All right. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, creeping. Speaking of creeping,
That's right, everybody.
Somebody say, crack
Nobody done that. I will keep
Oh my god. Is there like anything worse than
It
this?
is true. Very true.
Oh, brother, what is happening?
This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.